Whenever anybody gets up to talk to you, it's a pretty good idea to try to find out where he's coming from, so I'm going to spend a minute at the beginning talking about my background just a bit. This is pretty much where I grew up. It's about 8 miles from my house. By the time I was 10 or 11, Buzzy Farrell and I would ride our bicycles up there a few times every summer. That little rock in the middle is Beacon Rock, which we would climb to the top of. And it is some of the most spectacular scenery in the world. I've probably visited 120 or 130 countries by now, and never found anything that moves me more than this scene. This is the actual town that I grew up in. That's the paper mill that dominated it. As I was growing up, there were no pollution control laws or pollution controls of any kind, so it poured its effluent into the river, and we would occasionally go down there to go fishing, and there'd be 10,000 dead salmon. Poured sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide out of those stacks that rotted our roofs and pitted our cars and destroyed our lungs. Until I left home, I woke up every single morning with a sore throat. And that beautiful land that I went out to visit was clear-cut. I mean, you'd be camping someplace surrounded by lush greenery and wildlife and go back the next summer and there would be literally hundreds of square miles of bare dirt eroding away. And that was not uncommon. That was simply the way that we did business. Each generation sort of thinks of the land that it grew up in as normal, but the land that I grew up in was this. This is Pittsburgh 3 years after I graduated from high school. It's the sort of thing that we think of with Shenzhen or New Delhi, Mexico City. This is Los Angeles. Again, 3 years after I graduated from high school, you could not, on a bad day, see one block down the street. When we look down our noses at developing countries that sometimes have pretty serious air pollution problems, it's important to remember that it was not that long ago that this was us. And one of the things, I'd like to think the big thing that changed it, was an outpouring of public concern, of public outrage in 1970. At that point, 20 million Americans, 1 million of them in New York City alone, as this picture in the New York Times shows a portion of, standing up and demanding fundamental changes in the way that America does business. This was the first time that I've ever climbed up on a stage 80 feet high, looked out over a crowd, and it was like climbing up on a lifeguard stand and looking out over the ocean. The people stretched back further than the eye could see. This is the sort of stuff that everybody said about me then. I was called angry. I think part of that has to do with my Czech-Irish facial composition. Bill Clinton, when he's neutral, looks like you've just told him the funniest joke he's ever heard. When I'm neutral, I kind of look like you just insulted my wife. But in any case, I was thought to be very angry, and I guess I actually was pretty angry. In the first 5 years after Earth Day, these are the things that happened. I'm not going to read through it because there is nothing more boring than somebody reading to you something that you can read for yourself. But it is the first 5 years, and if I'd taken the first 10 years, it would have filled up another slide. It was until 1980 that we were really on a roll. And these things have fundamentally transformed the American economy, American culture, American values. We have professions now that didn't exist then, academic disciplines that didn't exist then. People are choosing their cars based upon environmental values. They're choosing their diets based on environmental values. Many of us chose to have 1 or 2 children based upon environmental values. I can think of nothing in American history that has changed the nation more than those 10 years, with the possible exception of the New Deal. And that was led by an enormously popular president coming out of the Great Depression. This was led by citizens rising up and demanding change. I think it's probably on the order of $100 trillion in pure economic terms of net benefits since then. The only really thorough assessment that I've seen of any of that legislation was the Clean Air Act. It was arguably the most sweeping. The costs were approximately $1 trillion over the first 40 years. The benefits were approximately $23 trillion, so the net benefits of $22 trillion from that one piece of legislation. So with that background, this is a little bit about my journey from being an environmental firebrand to a real estate developer. It shocked many of my friends, but it was not the real estate that you often think of, where it's superficial things that are simply trying to separate people from their money. What we built was this. This is the Bullitt Center. It's right smack in the middle of Seattle on Capitol Hill, and a fairly stunning building in many ways. Once again, I'm not going to read the whole list to you because you can read it more rapidly yourself, but it is the only, I think still, the only 6-story building in the world that is truly net energy positive from sunbeams hitting its roof. And it's in the cloudiest major city in the contiguous 48 states, which leads to a reasonable question: what's up, Honolulu? It's the most energy efficient building in the world, 1/3 the energy per square foot of the second most efficient building in Seattle. The average water use in commercial buildings in Seattle is 28 gallons per square foot per year. Bullet's use last year was 1.06 gallons per square foot per year. In area after area, physically, we have tried to make this building one that if all the buildings in the world were built like this, the environmental problems from the built environment would effectively disappear. We eliminated 362 common building materials that are toxic, carcinogenic, mutagenic, endocrine disrupting. We just got them out. Spent a person year at that point having to evaluate the materials. Now there are a whole bunch of things like Declare that you can go to and find those materials quite easily. Construction costs, $355 a square foot. That's not cheap, but it is lower than the median construction cost of Class A office buildings in Seattle. It has been constantly fully leased at market rates. It has a rate of return that is higher than many of the other components in the foundation's portfolio of investments. It is not a dump. I mean, we can't argue that solar panels are as cheap as asphalt shingles, but we made a whole series of precise choices. We don't have any Carrara marble. We don't have any granite countertops. We don't have any Chihuly sculptures. What we did was we invested in deep efficiency in a building that is still quite striking, and although it doesn't have marble, it has some wood in it that is pretty amazing. I was embarrassed this morning as I looked at these slides to see that those lights are on over the table. The photographer turned them on. They're LEDs that feed into a fiber network. They only draw 10 watts, but those lights are never on because this is so well lit from daylighting. And here are a few more slides. I'm now sort of saying, okay, we've touched all the environmental bases. We've touched the economic basis and passed those tests. What it's actually like to be in this building as a tenant? What's it like to live in a living building? And as you can see, it's pretty comfortable. This is sort of the alternative. You walk into a standard Class A office building through the front door, and what you see, it's a bank of elevators. If you look really hard, someplace there may be a door that leads to a stairway, and you pass through the door and it's dark, it's murky, it smells a little bit. If you're a woman, you may be uncomfortable climbing it. You go up 2 or 3 stories, you get there and the door is locked, and you go back downstairs and climb in an elevator and go up. It is not designed to promote walking. This is something that I take great pride. I created the idea and the branding for it. It's called an irresistible stairway. It's filled with light. It's surrounded by glass, and when you walk in the front door of the building, this is what is drawn to you. If you want to use the elevator, you have to go through a door. Now, it's a pretty easy door to go through. It's got the little pedal down there that you can touch if you're in a wheelchair. If you've got a heavy load or if you're disabled, there's absolutely no problem to get on the elevator and go to wherever you're going. But the default, the behavior that naturally more than 90% of the trips in the building is on the stairway, saves a fairly trivial amount of energy. Our elevator is very efficient and it's regenerative, but it makes people healthy. I mean, we grew up the first couple 100,000 years chasing gazelles over the African savanna. Now we are trying to avoid climbing 1 flight of stairs. That's bad for us, and we tried to build this building in a way that is really good for the tenants. There again is the stairway. One of the things that happens in this building is that it has a brain, a nervous system, a musculature, bones. It even has an alimentary canal. It is like an organism. On a hot summer night, when it got a little bit warm in the building, at 9 o'clock at night, all of the windows pop out 6 inches. The air inside the building goes out the top of the window because it's warm, and it goes, and the cooler air outside comes in through the bottom, and it sets up a natural convective current, replaces all the air in the building with cooler air, cools down the 3 inches of concrete on the floor. But it also, if you happen to leave papers on your desk, it blows those papers all over the place. So lifestyle changes in a living building, you actually have to put a paperweight on your this is an interesting thing. I got this from somebody. I gave a talk at a conference, and he gave me that as a prize. I think he was trying to be nice, but it turns out that is fossilized dinosaur dung. I think this is a guy who had a limited understanding of metaphors when Henry had his prize. The other thing that happens on those summer days when it's going to be a little bit hot is our exterior Venetian blinds deploy. Now, the computer in the basement knows where the sun is on the sky at every hour of every day of the year because it's always in the same place. What it doesn't know is whether it's cloudy, whether it's hot, because it's just a computer down in the basement. The nervous system tells them what's the outside temperature, what's the inside temperature, how bright, how intense is the sunlight. Is it raining? Is the wind blowing? And if so, from what direction and how fast? All that stuff feeds in. And on that hot summer day, as the sun is going across a clear sky, these blinds deploy on the outside of the building and stop the sun from penetrating the glass. American Venetian blinds are essentially always inside the glass, and that's too late. The sun's already inside. The right place to put Venetian blinds is on the outside. You visit Berlin, and a great many places, including the Bundestag, have their Venetian blinds on the outside. Very small thing, but an important one. This is, before we poured the concrete on the floor, this is the radiant heating system, and a little bit in a really hot summer, radiant cooling system. We can put some cold water through it as well on hot days. And the lifestyle change. In the winter, many of us, including those feet there that belong to me, go into our stocking feet because it's just so nice to have that warmth underneath. It's a lifestyle improvement. These are the composters in the basement. We don't send anything to a sewage treatment plant. We treat all of our sewage ourselves. Those blue tubes coming up maintain a constant negative pressure so that in a bathroom, if you do something that is very smelly, it is not smelly for the person that comes in 30 seconds later because the negative pressure has sucked it all down. We have foaming toilets that make things, if you will, slippery and let them go down 6 stories. It's the only 6-story building as well with only composting toilets. That's among things that kept me awake at night during construction. That was one of them. You do not want stuff to go down 3 stories and stop. We haven't had any of those problems. The foaming toilets use very, very little water. I mean, a typical low flush toilet, at the cutting edge, 1.2 gallons. Our typical flush is about 3/4 of a cup of water. So that explosive force of a gallon of water splashing rapidly into a toilet sends all sorts of microorganisms out into the atmosphere. The foaming toilet, everything is just taken care of by gravity and by the negative air pressure, and there's none of those health problems that are associated with it. I think these are actually superior in every way to, but you can't use them with a centralized sewage treatment facility. You got to have enough water if you're going to be shipping this stuff 10 miles to a sanitary sewer. But if you're going to do it in your basement, this is the way to do it. And that's just a close-up of a foaming toilet. I had this in an animated form, and I lacked the technical competence to do it, but you can get the sense of what this is like. Actually, I tell clients, I think this is okay, we're all adults here. Think of yourself when you go to the toilet as like a World War II bombardier. You got a target there, let's see if you can hit it. But the most important thing is wait for 30 or 45 seconds until you've got the foam there. Once you've got the foam, then you've got the slipperiness that makes everything go. If you go in at the very last minute and discharge immediately, you can leave some skid marks behind. Other things that you have to do to really play with us and help us sail the ship, you have to walk, bicycle, or use transit or lift. If you have to bring a car in, there are parking lots a couple blocks away, but the building does not have a parking place for automobiles. Use the irresistible stairs. Again, nothing that forces you to, but people do it by default. Put paperweights on papers, especially in the summer. It has an open office layout that's necessary for the daylighting. Some people don't like that, especially for the first month or two when they get in. Those are probably all of the major negatives of a building that gets all of its energy from sunlight that hits its roof, all of its water from the rain that hits it, and has no toxic things in it. These are some of the nice parts of it. It's a better quality light. It's the full spectrum that we all evolved as a species to use. It changes over the course of the day as the sun changes its position on the horizon and goes through greater and lesser amounts of the atmosphere. And one thing that we didn't know, nobody anticipated, is seasonal affective disorder, which is very common in Seattle, disappears for people in the Bullitt Center. When you've got natural daylighting, it goes away. Has fresher air, It's the most comfortable building in the summer and the winter. There's never any time when you stand next to a window and feel like you're frying and move inside 15 feet and feel like you're freezing, because we don't have any air conditioning. It maintains its comfort through natural design. Zero toxics, reduced sick leave, increased productivity, no smells in the toilet. And for those of you familiar with walkscore.com, which tells you how convenient any location is to all of the essentials of life, we've got a walkscore.com score of 99 out of 100. It's convenient to everything. That's the end of my formal talk. I want to spend, since I've got the microphone here and Joel is telling me to cut it off, 1 second or 2 seconds or 15 seconds to say, 2020 will be the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. We have, if you remember those slides of Pittsburgh and Los Angeles, made some incredible progress on a number of issues inside the United States. We are in worse shape in a vast array of global problems than we were back in 1970. And it's my hope that Earth Day in 2020 will last a month, that it will involve at least 180 nations, and that every person in this room will be involved in putting together something that makes clear to the world what it is that we can do if we all do our best. Thank you very much.